This is Glambition Radio, episode number 210 with Dr. Mary Claire Haver, creator of the Galveston Diet. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. You are about to hear from an OBGYN who has delivered thousands of babies. She's completed thousands of well-woman exams, did everything an academic professor could do for over 20 years. But as her practice grew and her patients aged, they started to complain about this weight gain. And, she admits today on the show, her repetitive advice is, just got to eat less and get to the gym more and blah, blah, blah. Well, then she hit menopause. And she realized what everyone's going through. And then she realized that women at midlife were completely omitted from most nutrition studies. And it goes on and on and on. And that prompted her to create what she coined the Galveston Diet, which is going gangbusters. And it is a specifically designed plan for women entering midlife and menopause. And it's the only one that's scientifically backed. And so this was so fascinating. So I said, let's get you on the show. I want to not only, of course, talk about this plan, but I want to find out how this came about. I want to find out how this happened. And there was a real touching story behind this about a big loss in Dr. Mary Claire Haver's life that really prompted her to not wait any longer and do this. So it's going to be an enlightening conversation, to say the least. Quick shout out to 2 reviews my team pulled for me from iTunes today. Thank you. We've got ArtSeagal29 says, I've been following Allie for years. I love this podcast. I'm in the midst of a pivot in my business, and her messages in the show are timely and incredibly relevant for where I am right now. Next one is Inspiring by Podcast Lover 9901. I've listened to Allie's podcast since about the time she started it. I subscribe to many, but whenever I see a new one from Allie, I'll play hers first. Oh, I love hearing that. I love the insight she extracts from those she interviews, and this encourages women to think big and believe that we can do it too. And remember, this show is sponsored by The Trust, the new private premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. We are creating something extraordinary this year that has not been done before. If you or another female leader is craving conversations at a higher level, powerful connections, and a modern platform for connecting with other high-performing women globally, visit jointhetrust.org for more details and to request a brief informational interview. And now get ready for a great conversation with Dr. Mary Claire Haver. Paging Dr. Mary Claire, where are you right now?
Right now, I am sitting in my bedroom.
And not in the hospital?
Not in the hospital, no.
Yeah. You've been, as we're recording this kind of in the middle of COVID. And so, you've been working a lot.
A lot, yes.
Tell everybody what you do, in your day job or sort of day job.
In my day job, I am a OBGYN physician. I've practiced for well over 20 years. And the last about year and a half, I was able to leave the traditional world of private practice OB-GYN so that I could focus on my side gig. But I didn't want to quit completely. So I was lucky enough to find a position where I get paid by the hour. I don't have any benefits, but it allows me a lot of flexibility for travel and working on my other job. And now that COVID is here, we've been short-staffed because of people being sick. And so I have more time on my hands. So I have been able to jump in and pick up extra shifts to be helpful. It makes me feel really good to be active during this crisis.
Yeah, I peek in on your Instagram and you're always in scrubs. You're ready to go or in the middle of it. Why did you get into obstetrics and gynecology? Why did you choose that as a career path?
It's a good question. I originally went into medicine thinking I would be a pediatrician, maybe a pediatric oncologist. I had an older brother with leukemia, so that kind of shaped a lot of my thought process at the time. My very first rotation, so in medical school, in the traditional route, you do 2 years in the classroom where you just learn everything out of a book. And then the last 2 years, you're actually in the wards practicing medicine under supervision. And it's really in that third year, you do a little, 6 weeks, 4 weeks in each different specialty. And it gives you a taste of what your life could be like. So my first rotation was pediatrics. And I was so super excited. I, showed up, bushy-eyed, ready to go, knowing this was my path. And within a week, I realized this was not my path. And as much as I loved the children, I didn't love their parents so much. I didn't like that part of the practice. So surgery and internal medicine and the subspecialties, and OB-GYN was the very last thing. And my first night on OB-GYN, I was on night call in labor and delivery, and I delivered my first baby, or assisted. And at that moment, I just knew, it had everything I wanted. It had surgery. It still had continuity of care where I get to know my patients. It had the birthing process. I still cry. I still cry. I don't get teary or sniffly, so it just had that emotional connection that I didn't realize I needed. And yet I got to be a surgeon and still do all the kind of girl boss things that I wanted to do with it.
You like surgery?
I do.
Why?
Fixing things that are broken, and it's a calming process to me as long as everything's going right in the middle of it. But it's very technical. My mind just goes straight into the process of what we're doing. And I don't think about anything else. It's like step A, step B, step C. Most surgeries are very routine, thank God. And then we're done. And in a C-section, it's surgical, but then you pull out this beautiful baby and you get to have a little party in the middle of your job. When the baby's born, then you hand the baby off and you finish go back to your mindset of, okay, let's get this done.
The strangest thing I think of my births, and there was a lot of strange things, was the C-section itself is a strange thing. Like, cause it always reminds me of like the old magician trick, like they saw the lady in half, but the top is still waving, she's like, hi. And that's what it felt like. Cause I'm there, I'm present. I know stuff's going on. Like, I don't know what's going on down there, but suddenly there's babies, and it's just a funny thing. But so when I met you, you had just created the Galveston Diet. And so, I think it'd be a great place to start with, how did those dots connect? This isn't something you were thinking of even doing earlier. I know this came about from your work in your career. So let's kind of connect the dots, how that all happened, and go from there.
Sure. So I was your kind of busy traditional OB-GYN. I had a very robust private practice, but through an academic institution. So about 50% of my time was seeing patients, and the other half was teaching. So it was a nice balance for me. When I was in my 20s and 30s practicing medicine, I have patients of all ages, but you tend to grow with your patients. You build your practice on people having children coming to you early in life, and then they stay with you while they go through menopause and all these changes. So I started noticing my patients in their 40s complaining about weight gain. And I'd say, go to the gym more. Here's a calorie counter. Download this app, count your calories.
Have a salad. Mm-hmm.
Salad, it's fine. And here I am in my 30s, like effortlessly at that point, maintaining my weight and, doing my gym workouts and everything. And it just seemed like every year they'd come back. It's not working. It's not working. I'm not doing it right. And internally, I'd slightly roll my eyes and be like, you're really not trying hard enough. Come on. I know what clients said. And then I turned 40 and noticed things were getting a little tougher. And in my mid 40s, I had a couple of things happen. Menopause, my changes associated with menopause started. So all of a sudden, things were much harder for me as far as, where's this inner tube coming from? Why do I have this roll on the top of my jeans that I never had before? And my brother passed away. And in my grief process through that, I completely got off the nutrition train. I buried myself in carbohydrates and nightly glasses of wine to get through what I needed to do. And, 6 months of that, I kind of had a wake up call and was 15, maybe 20 pounds over my happy weight, that magical weight on the scale where everything is good in the world. So I was like, okay, I can't blame this on my brother anymore. He's in heaven laughing at me saying, okay, you can't blame this on, you can't blame it on. So I did all the things I told my patients to do. I went double down at the gym. I counted calories like a boss. I'd lose a pound or two, and then it would just come right back on. So then I'd get mad and frustrated and be like, Mary Claire, fix this. You're not trying hard enough. And I'd go triple down at the gym, running an extra, whatever I could do. And the same thing was happening over and over again. And suddenly it dawned on me. My husband works overseas. So he was getting ready to go on a trip. And I was in the middle of this crazy frustration. And I looked at him and I said, when you get back, because he was traveling for a month, you will have the wife you deserve. And he looked at me and he said, I have the wife I deserve. Whatever's going on in your head, you need to fix because you're being crazy right now. And that to me was a big wake up. And I was like, okay, counting calories and excessive exercise is not going to work for me. I realized I sounded like all of those patients that I had talked to who I didn't believe.
Yeah.
And I thought, being a scientist working at an academic institution, I marched down to the nutrition department and said, what's going on? All of me and all my friends in menopause are all kind of suffering with the same thing. The old tricks aren't working. We're having weight gain in places we've never had in our whole lives. Hormones are changing and nutrition kind of threw their arms up in the air and said, we only get paid to do studies on the elderly and 25-year-old athletes and a few astronauts. Like, we have nothing for you. And I'm like, what? All of these, where's the data? And they said, well, here's what we know. So they threw a bunch of articles at me just on kind of general weight loss health, what's going on with the fads. And I just went to town. I did what I do. I opened every book I could. I read every article, and I kept seeing this recurring theme, at least in people going through midlife, of inflammation. So we know that medically our chronic inflammation levels rise. They kind of go up in our 30s, and in our 40s, they really rise. And in women, they go up dramatically as we go through menopause. So just the aging process, inflammation levels go up. Plus throw in menopause, that in its own inflammation levels go up. And when we gain weight in our midsection, where we've never had it before there, that's called visceral fat. Those fat cells also become little factories for inflammatory cytokines. So we have three things in this like perfect storm of inflammation that are working. I'm like, okay, what medications do we take to combat inflammation? And they looked at me and they said, chronic inflammation, no medications work for it. The only thing we have is diet. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? And it turns out that very simple nutritional changes will actually lower those inflammatory levels, and the weight gain starts melting off. The efforts you do towards weight seem to become much, much easier. So instead of looking at the quantity of the food, the calories of the food, changing our focus to the quality of the food, looking at what we're eating seems to make the difference. So that was one of the core concepts of what I looked at. I also got excited about the data on intermittent fasting. And it's very in vogue right now. And I laugh and say I was fasting before it was cool. But the data started with a scientist called Mark Mattson, who's working with the National Institutes of Health, looking at neurodegenerative disease, so Alzheimer's and dementia, which are both have huge chronic inflammatory components, and looking at just dietary changes, simply shortening windows of feeding for patients. He has some animal models, and their cognitive scores improved greatly. So there's something about, during the fasting times and in the fasting process that inflammatory levels go down too. And I thought, okay, well, that's reasonable. I can skip breakfast, So, and the third thing was I really kind of looked at the psychology around it. When I talk to my friends, I talk to my patients in this country through the way food is kind of corporatized and the way we learn how to self-soothe. We are addicted to carbohydrates as a rule. Breaking that cycle of simple carbohydrate addiction of sugar, basically, of how we tend to feed ourselves sugar to make ourselves feel better. Breaking that addiction, I call that fuel refocusing. And so I put those three components together, tried it out on myself, and it was like magic. Within 2 months, I was able to get back to my happy weight. Of course, my girlfriends were like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just playing with this stuff. But I'd written it all down, and I made some Kinko's copies and gave it out to my girlfriend. They all tried it, fell in love with it, told their girlfriends, and all of a sudden, people are reaching out to me. My patients are coming in. They heard about it at the grocery store from their girlfriend. And I realized this is a thing. Like, people want to know more about this. So I had a small Facebook following on people talking about menopause. And I started talking about the plan there, never intending it to be a business. This was just something I was playing with. And I asked for volunteers to try out the program. I had thousands of people want to try the program. So I ran Facebook groups of about 150 people each. And it was great because they formed these little communities. And I would just dole out the information to them over a few weeks about the program, the science, the background, the data. People were sharing recipes, cheering each other on. And all of a sudden I had it just kind of, I wish I could say I had this Machiavellian plan and I was going to make this big business, but it was just a simple idea, something I wanted to try. It grew. I was able to formalize it. And then I had some savvy entrepreneur friends and you listening to your podcast. And I was like, this could be a business. What would that look like? So that's kind of how the Galveston Diet was born.
Yeah. And surprisingly, I mean, there's nothing else out there like this, right? I mean, you saw this was just such an underserved market.
When I did the digging on a program, developed by a physician for women going through midlife changes, there was nothing. There's tons by 25-year-old athletes, tons by personal trainers, but no one who had a solid medical background. And I'll tell you a secret. Physicians don't learn anything about nutrition in medical school. I'm self-taught. After I did it for about a year, I realized I feel like I need more training. I need more information. So I actually went to Tulane University and got certified in culinary medicine. It took me a year and a half. It was 60 hours of coursework. I had to fly out to these different labs, kitchens. I learned different cooking techniques. And that really helped solidify everything for me that this was the right plan and that this would work. And that I felt more legitimate because any doctor will tell you they don't teach us anything about this in med school. We know lots about surgery and medications, but very little about basic nutrition.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the some of the key points about, foods as we're, and, not that I know anyone entering midlife, but, I'm 48. Starting 2 years ago, I started doing the intermittent fasting, if you said the word fast to me before, I would just laugh, be like, there's no freaking way. Like I wake up dreaming of food. Like I wake up excited for when I found out though, you can enjoy some coffee, that I really don't like a lot of breakfast foods anyway. I just kind of eased into that. And then I started doing more, me personally, like more of a paleo type eating. Now, is that similar to, let's talk about foods that can be problematic for women of our age, as we see things start to change and we realize, geez, I better clean this up.
So anything, definitely for us, anything that we know causes inflammation. Now, there are things that will cause inflammation in certain people, but not for us. So if you have celiac disease, you cannot have gluten. It'll kill you, Other people are a little more sensitive to gluten or not. And some people are lactose intolerant. So those are things that are very specific to, your genetics and if you have those diseases. But there are definitely things that are inflammatory to everyone.
Okay.
Artificial colors, things that are chemically added to food to enhance flavor, to enhance shelf life, tend to be very, very inflammatory to us as human beings. We get away with it when we're younger because we're just healthier. But as we age, it will catch up with us. And so the gut is one of the biggest controllers of inflammation in our body. And we have the microbiome, which is basically the set of bacteria and yeast that live in our gut. There's good, there's bad. And so those, as we're learning, as more science about this is coming out, those gut bugs are exquisitely sensitive to those chemical additives as well. So, things that are heavily processed, including nitrites, that's a terrible one. Nitrites in the process. And then any of the artificial ingredients, usually a flavor or a color or preservatives. Those are the big four that you really should either avoid completely or just eat on a very minimal basis.
Okay. I'm writing it down actually. So really just, would you call it clean eating?
Really the best way to think about it is clean eating. Now, on the flip side, there's tons of food that is magically anti-inflammatory all on its own. And it's a no-brainer. Fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and whole grains.
Oh, interesting. Because so you still tell people to eat grains if it doesn't bother them.
Yeah, if they can manage it, and 85% of us don't have any trouble with it. But really, a whole grain is unprocessed as possible. So, now I'm not talking about cookies and crackers and things. The problem with a lot of that, not only is it a processed wheat product where they've taken out. So take a wheat kernel. Everyone's like, oh, it's a carb. I'm like, listen, it's got this beautiful bran coating. It's got an endosperm. It's got 3 layers. Traditionally, to make it sweeter, more addictive, taste better, the food companies will strip off the top 2 and just leave you with the sugar in the middle and call it wheat. When you strip away the top 2, you take away the vitamins, the minerals, the bran, the fiber, all the good stuff. And it just leaves you with that little kernel of energy, which is fine. In just small amounts, but typically, one piece of bread, they've taken all the goodness out of it in a traditional, and they might add a preservative, an artificial color, a flavor. Cereals, the processed cereals are the worst.
Right.
Because not only have they processed the wheat, they're adding sugar to it as well.
Yeah. That's interesting because I would have bet my life that your program, everything had to be grain-free, gluten-free, because that's very trendy right now.
No, it is trendy. And I feel bad for people who truly have celiac disease because they have a hard time finding what they need to eat because people who think they may have gluten sensitivity, and I'll tell you why that happens, are buying it and it's just really trendy. What happens is when you decide to go gluten free, which is not a bad way to eat for some people, you are cutting out all of that processed stuff as well as the good. You're throwing out the good with the bad. And so because you've gotten rid of all that bad, you're not eating processed breads, you're not eating crackers, you're not eating cookies, you're not, that is gluten. You feel so much better. And you're like, I must have celiac disease because I can't have gluten because look how good I feel. When in fact, you're just cutting out the heavily processed worst part of the wheat world, whereas a little bit of unprocessed whole grains are fine.
Yeah. So what's an example of like an unprocessed whole grain? Like, I'm not even sure.
Have a bread, something baked at a local bakery that is whole grain, whole wheat grain is 1,000 times better for you than, Bimbo or whatever we buy at the grocery store. I'm in Texas and that's a popular brand here.
Do you guys have Dave's Killer Bread? I love that.
We do. So you can get Dave's Killer Bread. So that is one that is no sugar added, completely unprocessed. That is a very nice alternative.
Okay.
So you don't eat 6 slices at once. You want
I know. One. Yeah. At 11 p.m.
Everything is balanced. So Galveston Diet, what I try to teach people when we do fuel refocus, we try to teach them about balance. You're not just going to have your carbohydrate, your healthy carb all by itself. You're going to balance it with a healthy fat and a healthy protein. So, like I talk about a piece of Dave's Killer Bread with a nice nut butter spread on top with as low as sugar added as you can tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful thing because then you're balancing your carbs, you're balancing your macros with that snack.
Yeah. And at your website, galvestondiet.com, for everybody who wants to check it out, I saw you have free recipes. I don't think those were up before.
Yeah. So we've been working on that. We have tons of free recipes out there for you to go and check out. I have links to videos I've done on YouTube where I love to talk about science. I'm just a dork at heart. So I have lots of scientific explanations on why I've chosen the components for Galveston Diet that I have. And all that's available for free.
Yeah. It was so interesting when I met you and then hearing about this because it just, that's when it really hit me. And also maybe because I'm paying more attention because I'm at this age that there was so little information. I mean, all we have really are like, every aging celebrity comes out with some type of book on wellness. Did you notice? And, that's kind of their last thing they do. Or like Suzanne Summers, she's still out there. It's just kind of, information's all over the map for women at our age. There's so little science to share. And so that really stood out for me when I met you, when we were together and that, I was going through your stuff and preparing to meet with you. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really well researched. Like she didn't just put this together and saw that it worked and now she's selling it. This is really documented scientifically. It all adds up.
And thank you for noticing. I have to stay true to who I am, my background, my training. I got extra training in order to make sure I was doing this the right way. But you're right. I was just filling a niche that there wasn't a sound plan, a sound program that was scientifically backed that was out there specifically for us.
Yeah. Do you think this market, the menopausal women and this whole market is going to be booming? I mean, and why isn't it? I don't know, because we're ready to buy. Like we have money, we have issues. It's a business, it's perfect storm.
One thing that people come to me and tell me, it finally worked. I've tried everything. I've tried this, I've tried that. I think there's just an information overload and so many people out there. I mean, the weight loss space is huge and it's a $multi-billion industry, but so much of it is not scientifically based. It's trendy, it's fad. You might lose a little bit of weight for a while, but I feel like people are like, this is something I can do for the rest of my life. This is not to like just diet into a smaller dress so you can impress your ex-boyfriend at somebody's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
This is health for life. And that's what I really wanted to focus on. And I think that speaks to people. I think my background, my training, me as a physician really speaks to people rather than me being a celebrity or a personal trainer who this plan might work for a few people, but I just wanted something that I knew would work for everyone.
And I think some of the other systems too have been hesitant to call their niche market, like to say like this is for menopausal women. It's almost like there was a stigma to it.
Well, I see that. And you don't want to get trapped that it's only a diet for, if you're in it for business. I started this as a way to just help people, as a way to help my patients, the way to help myself and to help my girlfriend. And it grew from there. So actually it does work for everyone. My husband does it, but I'm really comfortable talking to women and like you said, there's really not much out there for them. And if I just stay in my lane from a business standpoint, it's worked so far. We have 27,000 people enrolled in the program now. It's been a tremendous financial success, but I feel like from as a physician standpoint, I'm serving a greater purpose now because this is really health-based. This is improving their health for the long term. Yes, you'll look great. Yes, but your cholesterol levels will go down. Your blood pressure will go down. We are decreasing risk of stroke, heart disease. We're lowering your chronic inflammation levels, which are linked to 7 of the top 10 causes of death. That is what I'm focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we come up with a new name for menopausal, by the way? Because so growing up, I heard that name and I literally thought, I think of the frumpy, poorly dressed woman with like a pooch, and I'm like, am I going to start dressing poorly? And like, that's my biggest fear. Do I lose all sense of style as well? Menopausal, I hate that word, I think, because it had such a bad connotation growing up, at least in our generations. It was just like when life, it used to really decades ago and generations ago, that meant your life was over, basically, right? Even midlife, I'm not a fan of. It means it's halfway over. Like, do you have another name for all this?
God, I really wish I could.
Oh, God.
It still has that minnow in there. We're so ruled by our cycles.
Yeah. So tell me what's next for you. I know that you've been obviously very busy picking up shifts at the hospital and all this. And what's happening with your clients? Where do you see this going? I mean, the success you had just out of the gate was pretty enlightening.
It's been phenomenal. Right now with our, we've got several groups on Facebook. We've got subscription groups and things. We've really switch to a hang in there, we're going to get through this together mode rather than, okay, everybody, we're going to lose 25 pounds in the next, whatever. I think right now it's all about giving people grace and yes, this is a tough time and we're finding our new normals. I'm really, the attitude, everything is starting to change right now. People are getting more hopeful. They're seeing the curves flatten. And so come this summer, I think as these restrictions start getting lifted and we're getting more freedom, I'm really excited about, doing some more coaching. We have coaching groups that we put on hold because it was just too much with, everyone having to rearrange their whole lifestyle. So to restart up our coaching groups, and I've got assistant coaches now, and they're excited to get started again.
Wonderful. Where should people go if they'd like to learn more?
So just about every social media platform, the Galveston Diet. So I've got a YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram. It's all there.
Okay.
And of course, thegalvestondiet.com.
And so that people can sign up anytime, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't do like sprints or things like that at this time?
No, we have coaching groups. So the program is self-study, all online. It's a series of videos with me teaching. I know that adults learn different ways. Some like to hear it, some like to see it. I have graphics, I have audio-visual, I have things you can just read. All there, and it's you buy the program, it's $59. We have a sale right now. It's pandemic and it will be going through May. So the code word is pandemic, PANDEMIC, for 25% off, but it's $59. If you choose to do the coaching groups, which is a private Facebook group where we'll actually spoon feed you and guide you through the program with a small group, that is an additional $100 for a month. And we start those at the beginning of every month.
Okay. I like that. I like that you broke it up because sometimes people are just like, I just want the thing. I can do it myself. I just want the information. And some people really like participating. So what are the results that your clients and patients are getting when they put this diet into effect?
So I call them students.
Yeah. I was like, what do I call them? Students.
Right.
Okay.
I call them students. Legally, I can't practice medicine, on Facebook, and I don't do that. I'm giving nutritional advice, basically. People will try on the back end to ask me questions about blood pressure medications, and I have to tell them to call their physician. My malpractice will not cover, advice outside doctor-patient relationship. But so I call them students, and it's really been phenomenal. On the website, we have a whole wall of social proof. We have so many testimonials, but weight loss is definitely what people come to us for. But what they're walking out with is a sense of accomplishment, is a sense of power, is a sense of getting their life back. They are sleeping better. Their hot flashes are better. They are having, we talk a lot about meditation and journaling as part of this, life change process. They're coming out of it a better person. they feel better about themselves. Their relationships get better. It is the most uplifting thing for me. And it just makes me realize that 20 years of doing pap smears and delivering babies was great. But this is where I'm meant to be right now, that I'm helping women be healthier for the long term this way.
I love it. So to wrap up, Mary Claire, can you share 3 of your best pieces of advice?
Of course. Number one for me is always be here in a year. Commit to anything, either, if you're an entrepreneur, as most of your listeners are. I had an idea and, it worked for me. It started working for my friends. And when I got curious about how could I turn this into a business, and I had lots of failures, by the way, I always had that underlying thing, be here in a year, commit to a year to yourself, commit to a year. And then remember at that year to look back on all the accomplishments that you have had. So if you're going to do something, do it right. And remember, it's not going to happen overnight. Give yourself a full year and you will be absolutely amazed at the transformation, be it from an entrepreneur standpoint or from a personal standpoint. And the second thing is get help. We're not all in this alone. Someone's done it better. Someone's done it smarter. Someone can teach you how to be more efficient. And so with the Galveston Diet, here I am, I've been delivering babies, doing well woman exams, doing hysterectomies. And here I am trying to start a business. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was smart enough to know that there's people out there who I can find, I can hire, I can get advice from to help me do this. So with any daunting project that you decide to take on, and it could be weight loss, it could be improving your marriage, it could be whatever. There are people out there who it will be worth your time and possibly investment to get the right kind of help. And I have to say, Allie, you've been a tremendous help for me, both from the Iconic program to our personal one-on-one. I love listening to your podcast because I take away something, even if it's like go buy a bag from Rebecca Minkoff to make myself feel better. I always take away something that I learned from listening to other people who've been successful in other avenues of their life. And the third thing is just believe. And remember, you're going to fail, and that's okay. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, but just don't lose the faith. I knew that the Galveston Diet worked. I knew I had a sound program that would be so helpful to women, and I just had to figure out how to do it. And I've never lost that belief. Yeah.
And you had evidence too, right? I mean, because sometimes we forget that we know what we're talking about, and it's important. It's important. We're going to have to open that file out of the drawer once in a while. So Dr. Mary Claire, thank you so much for spending this time with us. You've made me want to get back on track with my eating. I appreciate it. After being locked up here with the kids, I've been doing pretty well, but you end up grabbing kids snacks when they're around all day, and you're having lunch with them, you end up doing a little more nibbling and snacking and stuff. So it's something that I'm not putting a lot of pressure on myself right now, but I'm excited to kind of get cleaned up when I'm motivated. And so I appreciate that inspiration. In the meantime, I'm having a few bites of mac and cheese with them. And I just thank you for being who you are and for treating our, sector of the entire female human race as humans and helping us learn what to do for our health. So thanks so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.